Okay, next bill, Assembly Bill 67, dealing with double pay on holiday.
I'm sure you
Act
won't
of
have opposition on this one either.
I'm sure you...
Okay. So AB 67 is simple, just as it states. It enacts double pay on the Holiday Act, an act of 2015. This act seeks to guarantee that employees are fairly and justly compensated for undue hardships associated with working during time that is commonly spent with family on Thanksgiving and Christmas. This past November and December, millions of Americans sacrificed time with their family on these federally recognized holidays to work for retailers and food outlets like Walmart, Staples, Gap, Starbucks, and much more. In many cases, working shifts that creep into this family time has become mandatory, with threats of being fired if you even take a sick day. They won't be able to do that next year, but which forces workers to make an unfair choice between their economic livelihood and their family. Currently, 3 states prohibit or limit the operation of business on at least one of these holidays. Maine, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island still adhere to what was commonly called blue state laws. AB 67 does not propose to be so extreme as to overreach and dictate business hours of operation. Rather, double pay on the holiday seeks to work within the bounds of federally recognized holidays to provide fair and just compensation for employees, ensuring that they receive at least twice their normal wages for the hours that they work on Thanksgiving and Christmas. On a personal note, my mother was a nurse, and because of her occupation was, of course, forced on occasion to work on Thanksgiving or Christmas, primarily on Thanksgiving. And it was a hardship. We always knew that there was a potential that she'd be called in. But because she had a union contract and work as a nurse, we knew that she would be paid double or triple her time for having to leave our family. We know that the hours that she worked on Thanksgiving would be paying for our Christmas presents. It's not in exchange for time spent with a family, but there is compensation for having to miss something that's special. That's why today, as we see more and more stores, more and more retail outlets, more and more restaurants opening up on these days, we want to ensure the workers that are forced to work on those days are compensated fairly. I have a number of speakers with me today that could speak about working on those days. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. We'll welcome the first speaker at this time.
Is this on? Okay. Julie Fisher. I have had over 30 years of service in retail. I work at Macy's, San Francisco. So I'm now quite a bit older than when I started. And I've seen a lot of the changes, including the ones we're referring to today, where stores now open both on Thanksgiving night, and in the case of the specific store I work at, the first time was at midnight, the following year was at 8 p.m., and the following year after that, most recently at 4 p.m. on Thanksgiving Day. One of the real challenges is we don't get to spend time with our family. We're not earning extra money. There's public transportation's reduced or non-existent, so some of the added costs are taking a cab to work or, something of that nature, finding a place to eat, because a lot of places are also not open. But the biggest loss is you don't get to spend this holiday, kind of a given from when you've grown up here in this country. You don't get to spend the holiday with your friends and your family. It's an exhausting event, and you turn around the next day is either Black Friday after Thanksgiving or the day after Christmas. And I think a practice we're well acquainted with, so I don't need to go into those details. But I look forward to seeing support for this bill, and that people who find they have to work on these days will at least get some compensation in light of the things we just mentioned that my colleagues are going to mention. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi. My name is Lori Thurn, and I've been in the retail industry for over 20 years as a grocery checker and a natural foods manager. In the grocery business, only a very small percentage of workers are offered full-time, mostly in upper management. The rest of us made a career out of the part-time that we're offered. In addition to part of the 20 years that I worked for 13 years solid every Saturday and Sunday. Every single Saturday and Sunday and many holidays. I worked the Christmas holiday year after year, an hour past closing. Working Sundays and holidays, you miss picnics, special family gatherings, holiday dinners, coaching Little League, watching T-ball, soccer, dance recitals, watching children open their presents. Again, with only part-time positions being offered, the premium pay was so important that I needed to work 8 hours on Sunday, Although I miss big holidays and firsts with my child, the premium pay I received was absolutely necessary to provide for my family. I spoke with a former coworker, and she wanted me to share that as a working student attending Sacramento State College and only being offered 24 hours a week, that working Sundays allowed her to buy books and pay for her own tuition. She's graduated and now gainfully employed here at the state capitol. I know that I speak for so many laborers when I say to be successfully employed for a long time is intrinsic to your self-worth and your sense of identity. So when asked to work every Sunday and miss out on countless holidays year after year, but then be monetarily compensated for it, it made us feel valued and as if we mattered. That increased self-esteem, helped with morale, and in turn productivity. It was a pretty positive cycle. I feel like voting for this bill balances the need for corporations to be profitable while recognizing that hard-working laborers' sacrifices matter. And this bill would ensure that we're treated with some dignity. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
My name is Margaret Hartshooten. Good afternoon. And I work for Walmart. I am a leader organizer of our Walmart. I have worked for Walmart for nearly 4 years and have gone on strike 7 times. Walmart uses attendance as a reason to fire people for striking. I was literally told last time that they did not recognize my strike as being legal. I don't feel that anybody should work on Thanksgiving Day. I feel that, yes, the extra pay would be beneficial, but mostly, I mean, I have to ride to work with my boyfriend because I can't afford to get my car fixed. Well, at least we're lucky enough to have the same schedule. I am one of the very rare people who have a set schedule at Walmart. Usually, you only know what your life is like 3 weeks of the month, and it just fluctuates like crazy. 1 day on, a couple days off, a couple days on, another day off. I'm 1 to 10. But that's because I am a member of our Walmart, and I have a tendency to speak out quite a bit. I think this bill is exceedingly important because there's people who work for Walmart, associates at Walmart, we're the working poor. We need as much help as we possibly can get. So our Walmart is really backing this 100%, and we really would appreciate if you would vote on it.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, Mitch Seaman with the California Labor Federation, also in support.
Great. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to add on in support? Please come forward at this time.
Thank you, Chairman Hernandez. Tristan Brown with the California School Employees Association, here in strong support of this bill, really in solidarity with labor and the countless number of workers who really provide for us during these holidays and deserve to have just compensation for that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Justin Fans on behalf of the California State Association of Electrical Workers, the Western States Council of Sheet Metal Workers, the California State Pipe Trades Council, the Elevator Constructors Union, all in support. And just real quick, were you at home on Thanksgiving with your family or Christmas? There are people that you rely on to be working while you're enjoying that time. These are the folks that you're fighting for, and they're not necessarily our members, but we believe and we're in the fight with you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, we, on behalf of the United Food and Commercial Workers, over 160,000 workers in this state, representing grocery, pharmacy, food processing workers. We are strongly in support of this bill. And on a personal note, from a former retail worker at a large department store who couldn't pick up her mom who was coming from out of town because I could not leave the store, this is a real issue that's long overdue, and I hope you take that into account. Thank you, sir.
Great. Thank you.
Linda Warner with the California Catholic Conference in strong support. And once again, we believe wholeheartedly that if you're going to be away from your families on these important days, you should be compensated. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to add on in support of this legislation? Here in Encina, at this time, I'd like to call up the opposition. Please come forward. And just as a reminder, 3 speakers, 2 minutes, and then every subsequent speaker beyond will be simply an add-on.
Chairman Hernandez, I hopped up Scott Governor here on behalf of the Construction Employers Association because we actually have an opposed unless amended position. Our members have collective bargaining agreements. Those agreements do include the holiday time. The issue we have with the bill is the CBA exemption also refers to paid sick days, which isn't germane to the bill. We would ask that the author please strike that as a matter of precedent. Again, our members are in compliance. We simply don't like that precedent going forward. So with that, we would remove our opposition. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next speaker.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and committee members. Jennifer Barrera on behalf of the California Chamber of Commerce, and we are opposed to AB 67 for various reasons. The first one, as outlined in the analysis, is we believe this is a violation of the First Amendment for a lot of non-business owners who do not recognize Christmas as a holiday, much less a family holiday, where they will be mandated to either shut down their business or pay their employees double compensation. I know the analysis references the fact that we have federal and state recognized holidays that include Christmas, but that's significantly different. As a private sector employer, you don't have to recognize those federal holidays. You don't have to recognize those state holidays. You're still able to do whatever activities, legal activities you want to perform on those days, including opening your business. So that's entirely different. The analysis also refers to the blue laws that are enacted in several states and references the 1961 Supreme Court decision in which those blue laws were held as constitutional. Since then, the majority of states have actually repealed or deemed their blue laws unconstitutional. In 2004, New York struck down their blue law as unconstitutional, and they stated, and I quote, "In view of the acknowledgement that Sabbath laws are founded in religious beliefs, it is time to declare all such laws unconstitutional." The substitution of secular concerns, such as protecting mom and pop from being overworked for the earlier concern that the religious nature of the day be observed, does not make the statute in question less reprehensible, especially when the government tells the retailer which day is the Sabbath. Similarly here, it is unconstitutional for the state to be dictating what day is a family day for business owners to recognize and either to shut down or pay their employees double compensation. So the fact that there are blue laws in the state that still exist in Massachusetts, Maine, and Rhode Island does not necessarily mean that that's the trend, nor does, as referenced in a 2007 Vanderbilt Law Review, mean that if they were challenged that they would still be deemed constitutional by the current Supreme Court. Given their jurisprudence over the last several years, the Law Review concludes that they actually would not be held to be constitutional, given the fact that you're dictating to private sector employers that you have to recognize a specific holiday as a family day as aside to any other holiday that the state either recognizes or that the federal government recognizes. So for the constitutional reasons, we're opposed. Additionally, we're also concerned with the fact that this will create a competitive disadvantage for our brick and mortar stores here in California who are competing with online retailers. A couple years ago, the legislature tried to level the playing field in that area with regards to collection of the sales tax by saying that online retailers who had a physical presence here in California through some manner had to collect sales tax to put on a level playing field with our local stores who were struggling with that competition. This bill would only mandate it for people actually doing business here in California. It will increase those costs for doing business on those couple of days, which will put them at a competitive disadvantage with an online retailer that doesn't have to have that same cost. We're also concerned with the fact that it includes exempt employees in the bill. So in the bill, if an exempt employee comes in for an hour on Thanksgiving, the employer would then be deemed to require to have to pay 2 times their salary for just the fact that they came in for an hour, which is a huge cost for California employers. And for those reasons, I'll leave the other points to my colleague, but the other point that I wanted to highlight is this is in the labor code. So any violation of it automatically is a representative action with attorney's fees and penalties, and so it leads to another litigation opportunity against our employers in California. And I just wanted to highlight to the point that a lot of the employees came up and referenced only the fact that they were having to work on Thanksgiving. And so if it's Thanksgiving, then I'm not sure why we're expanding this to Christmas as well, given the religious concerns that we brought up with the First Amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Mike Belote on behalf of the California Employment Law Council. Ms. Barrera covered a couple of the points that I would have made, but the bill makes no distinction whatever on which employers are covered. It's every employer, public and private, in California, regardless of how critical you or they may believe their work is on a daily basis, including holidays. There are many businesses that just believe that it is essential to be open on on those holidays. Now, it also says that you have to pay at the regular hourly rate. That differs from the regular rate of pay calculation, which is going to be, we think, part of the paid sick leave bill as it will be amended this year. So when you get into car dealers, for example, who have commission salespeople, you will have a very complicated calculation for what they're going to be paid on that holiday. Finally, I would say this. You folks are likely to be here for 12 years. Imagine the inevitable pressure to cover other holidays that people deem important. Our friends of the Jewish faith may well decide appropriately that their holidays are as important as Christmas, and our folks of the Muslim faith will believe that. People who have veterans in their family may decide that Veterans Day is the most important family day to them. I think there will be inevitable pressure to expand this to holidays that other people believe are as important or more important than Thanksgiving and Christmas. This is going down a slippery slope that I think is unnecessary and a bad idea. For those reasons, we are opposed. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Louis Brown, on behalf of California Dairies Incorporated, a slightly different viewpoint. We're a cooperative owned by family farmers in the state of California, family dairy farmers in the state of California. The cows that produce the milk eat 365 days a year. They must be milked 365 days a year. And that's just part of being employed on a dairy farm. We don't open the dairy on Christmas for additional profits. We're not retailers. We're taking care of animals that, in turn, take care of our employees and take care of our families. On most dairy farms, if not all dairy farms, it's the dairy farmer that's also out there on Thanksgiving and Christmas along with the employees. So when we started to look at this bill, we don't really know where we fit in because of the situation that we have and the work environment that we have. Most dairy farmers, if not all of them, have reduced hours on those holidays because the only essential activity needed to take place that day is to feed the animals and milk the animals. Everything else can wait for another day. So as it stands right now, we're opposed to the bill because we're being lumped in with everyone else. We would hope that we'd have the opportunity to work with the author of the bill and the sponsors to see if there's a different mechanism we can do to address these types of issues in our special situation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition to the bill? At this point, it is an add-on format. Please.
Mr. Chairman and members, Carl London here on behalf of the San Diego Regional Chamber of Commerce for the reasons you've already heard in opposition. Thank you.
Thank you.
Javier Gonzalez, California Restaurant Association, in opposition.
Thank you.
Lauren Hajic on behalf of the California Grocers Association in opposition.
Matthew Allen, Western Growers, also opposed.
Terry Thomas on behalf of the National Association of Theater Owners of California in opposition.
Thank you.
Mark Powers on behalf of the California Broadcasters Association in opposition.
Good afternoon, Tricia Geringer with Agricultural Council of California, also in opposition.
All right.
Brian Little with the California Farm Bureau Federation, also in opposition.
All right.
Nikki Moore with the California Newspaper Publishers Association in opposition.
All right. We do need a motion and a second before we continue moving forward. Is there a motion? Questions? Yeah. So we have a motion by Assemblymember McCarty, second by Assemblymember Chu. At this time, I'll take the issue now, the bill, before the committee. Members of the committee, do you have any questions or comments? I believe Mr. McCarty's first, then the second will be Mr. Wapner. Assemblymember McCarty, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Assemblymember, for bringing this bill forward. I do support the concept you're bringing forward. I didn't hear from the retailers in opposition, but maybe if you could remind us. I do think in the last couple of years there have been some major retailers that have done this on their own. And so it isn't unheard of for many larger ones that know what a big deal it is to have their shops open on these significant holidays to already do pay double pay.
There is a growing number of retailers, obviously those that have a CBA union contract that pay premium pay. I think we heard some of that. We also know in most of our hospitals, police departments, fire departments, they also get premium pay on the holidays. This is a generally understood principle for those folks who traditionally had to open up on the holidays. But as we see more and more retailers open up, not only on Thanksgiving, but now we're seeing it encroach upon Christmas, this is a group of folks who have not been addressed.
Thank you. Vice Chairman Harper.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. My understanding is that this includes exempt and salaried employees.
So,
why is that?
Okay, so I want to address the concerns, and I was disappointed to see some people up here in opposition after last year's, as we talked about before, sick day proposals. I think I've worked with most of the employers groups who came forward to adjust our bill to ensure that we're trying to achieve what we achieve without overburdening business or not trying to do more than we anticipated. Although the chamber has been in, I didn't hear some of the concerns I heard today were for the first time. However, as far as, and to do away first with the first line of opposition, yes, we're going to change the collective bargaining agreement exemption to mirror the overtime collective bargaining agreement exemption that does not have a reference to paid sick days. Secondly, we are trying to capture the employees who, in fact, are technically exempt. What we want is to mirror the overtime statute. So those employees who are subject to overtime, the problem with saying it like that is I'm not willing to leave out farm workers, which are currently left out of our overtime protections, and we have to deal with some other workers who have recently been pulled out of our overtime protection as well. So we are working on the language of the bill, but our intent throughout this process, and this is a process, is to cover hourly workers.
You know, I wanted to thank the folks who are here for California Ag Day. I did see the mobile dairy classroom, so it was helpful in terms of illuminating the concerns from dairy workers. Does this cover only private employers, or does this cover the state of California and public employers as well?
No, this would cover the state of California as well, but I would note that, of course, most of the workers in the state of California are, in fact, covered by a collective bargaining agreement that satisfies the opt-out provision. They also all, a majority of the workers that work for municipalities in the state have premium pay on the holidays.
To take a very kind of illustrative point, say for instance there was a football game that was occurring on Thanksgiving. Would this apply to the coaches?
Well, hopefully after all of this, well, coaches are not hourly paid workers, but hopefully after all this it'll apply to the cheerleaders too.
No, but would it apply to the salaried workers such as the
No, I already stated that our intent is to solely deal with hourly workers. However, it would apply to possibly the ticket takers, the janitors, the food service workers, and hopefully one day the cheerleaders.
And my understanding is the Chief Executive Magazine rated California as the 50th in rank in terms of being able to do business. Do you think this would help or hurt our ranking in terms of employers' ability to be able to do business within the state of California?
I think there was a study that just said that we were, in fact, the best place to do business. So, quite frankly, I think when you're talking about doing business, we want to make sure that our middle and working class folks have expendable income, can actually spend the money in our small business and retail establishments, and this actually helps that.
Do you think that this would increase or decrease the risks of litigation to businesses?
For businesses to violate the law, they're always subject to litigation. There is no personal right of action in this bill, or private right of action.
And so is your thinking that this should not be a collective bargaining issue, that this should be determined by the state of California?
Absolutely, sir. I think if unions were accepted in CardCheck, were accepted at every one of these establishments, that it absolutely should be bargained for and should be a subject of collective bargaining agreements. However, we have broken labor laws that don't allow workers to unionize at places like Walmart, and until that day, we need laws like this to protect those workers.
And my understanding is, currently you have plenty of public employers as well as private employers that do operate on Thanksgiving or Christmas. Police and fire, you're going to have operating,
Sure.
every day of the year. But of course, in the private level or semi-public level, you find sports venues. Just as I pointed out, there's plenty of football games and other basketball games and such that are happening on Thanksgiving and Christmas, where this would apply. Theme parks, especially sensitive to our to my home county. Movie theaters, not uncommon for people to go to the movies on Christmas Day or on Thanksgiving. It was written, I think, recently in the Los Angeles Times how popular Chinese food restaurants are on Christmas Day as well. And so, each of these employers have been working in a way to be able to be attractive enough for employees to be able to show up on a holiday. I myself have worked part-time in a sports venue in the past before, and they offered the wage that was needed to be able to get the workforce to be able to show up, to get the sports event to be able to happen on time and in a manageable way. But they were also more than happy to also include a little bit of hospitality as well, help people out with the Thanksgiving meal, etc. And they did so without compulsion by the state of California for an additional wage. They just recognized, under the free market that you really need to make sure that people actually have enough and are compensated enough to be able to show up, and sometimes that's in a non-monetary benefit. Is your thinking that the free market doesn't meet the ability for employers and employees to make that decision already?
Quite frankly, I don't think we operate in a free market. If we want to take the NFL as an example, it's highly subsidized, so-called nonprofit where the owners are making millions of dollars, and I think that they can pay their employees a reasonable wage, and we unfortunately have to require what that is. If left to its own device, the free market, we'd still have slavery, child labor laws, and no minimum wage. So no, I think we have very different ideological beliefs about how employers should be dealt with. And quite frankly, I think it's fair and just to establish, just like we have minimum wage and overtime protections, that when large, rich corporations are choosing to operate on Thanksgiving and Christmas, that they should compensate their workers, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Harper. Assemblymember Patterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Just keep it coming.
Two areas I'd like you to address.
Sure.
One is the, I think, really serious constitutional question with respect to this. Number one, actually, I had not contemplated this as an additional hurdle, I think, to get over. And the second thing I'd like you to address is the opposition from the Broadcasters Association and from the newspaper publishers. It seems to me that there is a serious constitutional question raised, and I'm curious about how you have worked through that, and if you have had a constitutional analysis with respect to this. And secondly, does this not concern you that this may, in fact, have chilling consequence on freedom of the press and speech?
All right, first of all, I'm glad you asked the question. I didn't know that there was, in fact, as the other side will often say, a war on Christmas. The difference is it's being waged by the Chamber of Commerce. So I want to very seriously take on what I think are their ludicrous claims that this in any way violates the First Amendment by way of the Establishment Clause. In its letter in here today, the Chamber quotes convenient lines from cases and yet ignores the Supreme Court's generally relied upon test of the Establishment Clause, first articulated in Lemon v. Kurtzman. The application of the three-pronged test from Lemon clearly shows that this law would not violate the Establishment Clause, as the legislation has secular purpose of promoting the family, increasing pay. In no way does it advance or inhibit religion unless the chamber is arguing it is the religious principle to force people to work for minimum pay on every day of the year. I don't think that's a religious principle. And finally, this in no way is an excessive entanglement in church and state. Furthermore, the chamber neglects to examine the cases that directly speak to holidays by both the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court. Specifically, in the County of Allegheny versus the ACLU, Justice O'Connor finds in writing with a concurrence, as observed in this nation, Christmas has a secular as well as religious dimension. It has, in fact, been suggested that cultural aspect of Christmas in this country now exceeds theological significance as a holiday, and the celebration of Thanksgiving as a public holiday, despite its religious origins, is now generally understood as a celebration of patriotic values rather than particular religious beliefs. just like the 4th of July. Likewise, McGowan v. Maryland, the Supreme Court upheld Sunday closing laws, and in Kamek v. Waihe, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, under which California falls, explicitly allowed Good Friday as a legal holiday day, despite the fact that it is much less secular in nature than Thanksgiving or Christmas. I think there is no case law that suggests that this would be violating our First Amendment rights. I hope in the future the Chamber will limit its arguments to opposition's merits of the bill instead of attempting to elicit support based on erroneous readings of the law, misguided arguments about the separation of church and state, or if they prefer to continue down that line of opposition, perhaps they should concede that we pay double time on every single federal holiday. I wouldn't be opposed to that amendment if they'd like to suggest it.
May I respond, Mr. Chair, to those comments since they were directed right at the Chamber of Commerce?
You know, I'm going to defer to my colleagues on this one because I have not given that opportunity for any other bill, for any other person to do that.
I hold the floor.